Hey, everybody, welcome. Today is Wednesday, July 3rd. We're glad you're here with us. If you are live on the call with us, if you are watching on replay or listening on replay through the podcast, we're glad to have you with us. Hope everyone has a wonderful 4th of July. It's weird to have the 4th of July in the middle of the week.
No, I just saw a blank on my calendar. I said, wow, how could that be? And I didn't even realize it was a holiday until yesterday.
No, I've got student calls tomorrow, so I guess it's not a total holiday for me either. We are going to take some questions today. I sent out an email to our students earlier in the week and I said, what's your biggest challenge with just under 30 days to go to the exam? And we got some interesting comments back. So Tracy, you and I are going to talk about those. Amanda is not feeling well today, so we asked her to just get better and rest up a little bit. This last month leading into the exam is hard on everybody, bar takers and bar coaches alike. And so we want to make sure everybody's in good shape. Tracy, what's it feel like? You've been doing this for a few years now. This last 30 days is an interesting time, isn't it?
It is. And I wanted to also invite anyone who is feeling like they need some coaching this last 3 or 4 weeks. We'll still open up. We decided to open up that 5 for 5 coaching. We did that for one student yesterday. So if you sign up this week for 5, we'll give you that deal. I think this is the time where you need to sit back, and maybe tomorrow is a good day to do that. Sit back and evaluate where you are in your process, what your biggest challenges are, what your deficits are, and what your strengths are too. And then figure out if there's something we can do to help you, because we are here and we definitely want to help you.
And we have capacity to take more people. That's part of the reason we decided to go back to the 5 for 5 is that we wanted to help. And we knew that some people had taken advantage of those calls and wanted to add more calls. And we wanted to do that. So Amanda, Tracy, and I are all available. You can use the code 545. It's a coupon code, and it will take your pricing down to $500. And remember, you can still use the Klarna, Affirm, or Afterpay to stretch your payments out over a longer period of time. So it's very affordable and really valuable, I think, at the end to get objective feedback. Because one of the things that we learn is that bar takers right before the exam are a lot of things, but objective is not one of the words I typically would apply to it, right? It's easy to get freaked out about small things, to obsess about things that probably don't matter a lot. And it's also easy to be too easy on yourself in a way, to think your writing is better than it is and be a little sloppy in some of the technique. And so it's nice to be able to hear from somebody, hey, you need to tighten this up or change this or modify this. And then, of course, there are just people that are still learning and need that approach. I did a coaching call yesterday with a student. We did MBE questions, and it was really helpful to work through selective intuition. The student was telling me that they just couldn't get questions. We did, I think, 7 questions. They got 6 of them right. So I think it's really helpful to get that directed input and be able to refine techniques. All you have to do is jump on your online course. You will see the course there. We'll put the link in after we record today, and the coupon codes would suggest that you do that if you're at all interested or inclined to do it.
It's the same process when you're preparing for trial in front of a court or a jury, and successful lawyers will preview their case to an associate or another partner or a trusted colleague. Because what happens is we're all achievers, right? You've achieved a lot in your life, and you get this idea as a performer that you are more prepared than you are. And sometimes there's blind spots. The shadow side of an achiever is deception, and self deception at this point can be deadly before the exam. So if you think of this again, I keep stressing the professional competency part of this exam. If you think of this as a trial lawyer, it's always a good idea to run your case by somebody else and your evidence so that you can see where those spots are. And it's the same thing with preparing for this exam.
Yeah, absolutely. So take advantage of that. Again, we'll put the link up, or if you need to get that right away, just shoot an email to admin@celebrationbarreview.com and we'll get you the link. I wanted to talk about 2 things broadly before we get to the questions directly from students. One of the questions that tends to come up a lot right now has to do with multi-state bar exam practice. Question that I got a lot this week was, how many hours should I spend doing those 25 or 30 practice questions in each subject if you're still doing those. And the answer very quickly is 2 hours or less to do 25 questions. And that includes answering the question, then reviewing the answer explanation, then mind mapping it. You should be able to get through 25 to 30 questions in about an hour, but we'll give you up to 2 hours to do it. And I want to remind those of you in our course that this coming Saturday is the Day 24 Countdown email, and that is the one that we focus on multi-state and all of the benchmarks for the practice tests, when you should take them, what you should be aiming for, how to take them. So I'll say that. Strongly suggest that you print it out and keep it for reference. But that's coming this Saturday. And I know that as we're talking today, some of you may be thinking, oh my God, the exam is right here, it's right now. It is not. We're a long way from the test. We're just reaching out for the month of July now and starting to think about this month coming up. The other thing that happens a lot at this stage, and particularly in the July exam, obviously only in the July exam, is we've got the July 4th holiday. And I get a lot of questions from people about, should I study? Should I take the day off? How do I do it? And my answer, and I'll be curious as to yours, Tracy, my answer is to sandbox just a little bit. That is, get up early tomorrow morning and study for a couple of hours uninterrupted. Close the door, turn off your phone, do the things you've got to do. When it's time to go to the picnic, go to the picnic. Don't study for the bar while you're at the picnic. And for goodness sake, don't stand there watching fireworks with your bar review book open, trying to highlight. What happens is you won't study well, and you'll irritate everyone around you. And they'll remember that long after anybody remembers what your results were on the bar exam. So use your time tomorrow wisely. It's perfectly okay to have a family day, a rest day, a relaxation day. But if you want to study, go ahead and do the studying, but make sure that the studying is focused studying, not distracted studying. That makes sense?
Yes, and I think it's a great opportunity for you when you have a day like this in the middle of the week where you're not expected to answer other phone calls, answer other emails, be at the office, take your kids to school, those types of things. Set it up in advance, like Jackson says. You might have a partner in your household. Say, look, can you entertain the kids? Maybe take them to the parade or whatever in the morning and just let me do my focus study. And then when you get back, I can join the family unit and we can enjoy the rest of the day. I think it's a great opportunity that you don't get almost any other day when there is a holiday and no one's expecting you to work. The other caution I have is about alcohol consumption, because it may be very attractive and it may sound really great. And I'm going to just let my hair down and have this day. That would be okay. But tomorrow you need to be on your game. And if you consume alcohol on July 4th, chances are on July 5th, you're not going to be at your best. So really watch what you're doing and modulate what you're doing.
Yeah. I've also heard from a fair number of students who their firm or their employer is giving Thursday and Friday off to get a super long. So if you've got that opportunity, I would just piggyback on what Tracy said. This is a fabulous opportunity early in the final 30 days to get a ton of work done. Remember that if you're studying, our recommendation is 3-hour study blocks at the max. Take an hour to 2-hour break, then another 3-hour study block, then a meal break, and maybe a couple hours in the evening. But I would keep your total study time on a full day of study to 8 or 9 hours max. When somebody tells me that they're going to spend 10, 12, 14 hours study, not very productive. It really, you lose your efficiency so greatly after about 8 hours that it's hardly worth it. So don't do that. And if you're really stressing about how to get through it all, contact us, reach out to us, let us help you and work with you. Final announcement that I have, at this time of the year, I get a lot of requests for what people call my prediction videos, although I try very hard to not say they're prediction videos, but they're previews of the exam. And we did those at Level Up for students. And we are going to release those over the next week in each of the jurisdictions. You'll find it in your online class. We'll send you an email and we'll post it in the community group. Now, these preview videos allow me to look back at the last exam in your jurisdiction, identify what was tested, any trends or items going on in that exam, and then to use a scale of 1 to 5 for the likelihood that I see of that subject being tested on the upcoming exam. Over the years, those videos have become exceedingly popular. Not always sure why. So I'm going to watch for those over the next 7 days. We'll get them all out by the 10th of July so that you've got a couple of weeks if you want to have some additional focus, but certainly don't want you to veer off of your studies just because I think one subject is more likely to be tested than another. And it was fun to do it at level up and to have student feedback as I was doing it. Some people were like, really? You really think that's...
Are you registered on the sports books?
Yeah, there you go. Saints to win the NFC South. I don't think. All right, let's go ahead and jump into some questions from students and then the biggest challenge question. I got this one question that was specific, but I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to address it. I had a student that said they took a trip and I'd been back home for about 2 weeks, but I got extremely sick in that period from about the 7th week before the exam. And the student said this was the first day I was able to get back to work and get back to my studies. But when I did that, I started to panic because I saw that I'm still at 34% completion on the course. I don't want to give up for July, and I know I have a lot of makeup to do. I don't want to skip assignments, but I can change my work schedule to get 5 hours a day of study in on weekday, so it's 25 hours, in 9 hours each day on Saturday and Sunday. And I remember we just said we think 8 to 9 is like the max that you can do, but that's a total of 18 hours on the weekend. So by my total, that's what, 43 hours for the week. I'm willing to do more hours on the weekends if you think I should. And I have time off this week because of the holiday. And then I have the week before the exam and before I have to be back to work. So what should I do? I'm literally getting back on the study horse. I think there's a couple of things I would say here. One is, don't overdo it. As much as you want to get through everything, that probably isn't going to happen easily. If you're doing 40 hours a week, 45 hours a week of study, that's a full-time job. And that's a lot to do. And this person is working a lot too. I doubt if they're going to do 45 hours a week of study plus a full-time job. So my suggestion is hit the high points. Skip the optional course. Go through the lectures at fast speed, or at least let them run without stopping them. And make sure that you are photo reading. This particular student is a photo reader. Photo read your outlines and stay within the time frames that we've suggested for doing your mind maps. So if you're a photo reader reading an outline for the first time, it takes 15 minutes to photo read it. We give you 2 hours to do a basic mind map. You might also use the bar maps product that we offer because it's already got mind maps built into it. Then when you get to the review section, you're not going to do all of the review. You're going to do some full-length practice tests, as we're going to describe in the day 24 email, and you're going to focus on the thing you don't know. Instead of like you to think of it like a funnel, you're just narrowing down to the things you don't know, and that's what you end up having to study at the end. If you're feeling really comfortable at this stage, good, but probably means you're not stretching yourself, you're not pushing yourself into the areas or the topics or the approaches that you're not yet really enjoying. And you should be doing that. You should be making yourself a little uncomfortable. So that was my advice to the student. Tracy, what would you say to them?
I would say to print out a block calendar between now and the bar exam and fill in that calendar with your plan, since you got off your plan with travel and with being sick. And I would block out every single day at least an hour and a half out of that block in the afternoon for a nap, because you need to rest if you've been sick. If you just keep pushing and pushing as hard as you can, you're going to crash before that exam. But this is a time, and this really just not for this student. I think this would be good for all students to just print out, like I said, a block calendar that you can see right in front of you. Use color blocks, whatever, but map out each day. I think that will really lower your anxiety level when you see that you do have time to fit this all in. And it will also help you structure your day and structure your rest times as well as your peak work times.
Yeah, I like that idea of actually putting it out either digitally or by hand so that you can see it all. It just seems so overwhelming in the aggregate. When you break it down to one study session at a time, that's plenty. Now, for people who have already gotten through most of the course, what you should be doing now is identifying your hardest subject, put them in rank order. And most people can identify their hardest 3, 4, 5 subjects and their least difficult 2, 3, 4 subjects. And then there's a few in the middle that just it's the bar exam and they're hard. But what you want to do is really spend time in the difficult areas for you, even if I don't think it's likely to be on the exam. And the reason is no one's infallible. Anything's possible on the test. And you don't want to have a emotional, visceral reaction when you open up your test book to say, oh my God, there's a question on X and I hate X. Do enough questions over this next period of time that you desensitize yourself to that subject and you feel comfortable enough that if you open up the booklet on Tuesday morning, you go, oh, okay, I've done these and I can handle it. So I think that's really important is pick your shots and don't have FOMO. Don't worry about, oh, I didn't do every single lesson all the way through. I'll just say this. When I talk to people that sat in the big box bar review, and it doesn't matter which one they're in, when they come to me to talk about taking our course, inevitably, they'll tell me they got through very small percentages of those big box courses. It's not unusual for me to hear people say, I got through 30% or 40% of the course, and that's without anything else happening. They just don't get through it. Most of our students get 75% of the course or more in. You should be fine. Those students in big box need 600 hours, you need 300. So there's no reason to panic. And I think that's really what you're saying, isn't it, Tracy? Don't panic. Just take it one day, one study period at a time.
Don't panic and don't talk yourself out of competency on any subject. Talk yourself into competency and work yourself into competency on any subjects. Show them that you're in that subject.
Yeah. And start getting excited about it. There's a chance to show your competency. This is not a Spanish Inquisition. Right. So, what? Random.
Dating your
All right. Biggest challenge. We got a lot of them. I just tried to group them in broad categories to talk about them. They are, I'll say, I've done this for years. They are the same ones every time. I could pull them back from years ago and we'd still be current and reflected. But I wanted to take some that we got from this group. One student said, my biggest challenge is not questioning the result of my practice multi-states and trusting that I know enough to pass. Now, this was an interesting comment. If I didn't know the student, I would have thought it was because there was not trusting the results of my practice MBEs. Were they too low? This student had an extraordinarily high practice MBE, knock your socks off high. And I saw that, and it was a student I worked with on selective intuition. I was like, if you just do what we taught you to do, you're going to get these amazingly high scores. That's what happened. And the student was like, can I trust that? The answer is yes, you can. And when we talk about practice MBEs, at this stage, if you've gone through all your studies and you're doing the online practice exam or the MBE 1, 2, 3, if you're doing the 2021 practice MBE, all of those license tests, those are all pretty accurate. And we have pretty good statistics, so we can benchmark them and say, here's essentially what you should be getting. The only danger is that they're not infallible, right? You can take one of these tests and score lower than the benchmark, and it doesn't mean you're going to fail the bar exam. It just means you've got some stuff to learn. By the same token, you can get a very high score and not pass the bar exam if you get complacent or you get to the test and you don't do what you were doing in practice. The final thing you have to say about any practice, mixed question practice, is you have to do it under test conditions. The books have to be closed. You have to do it under time conditions. It's got to feel and act like a real exam. Sometimes people take these 200 question MBEs and they stretch them out over 3, 4, 5 days. That's fine for practice, but it is no good for predictability. So you've got to do it under the actual condition. Now, this particular student did the test in 3 hours, took a break, 3 more hours, and finished in about 2 hours for each section. And I'll just say, got a score that would, it's jaw-dropping in terms of the accuracy. So again, I know some of you think selective intuition as an approach. Why wouldn't we Christmas tree and eliminate wrong answers and do these other things? The reason is because selective intuition is crazy, ridiculous effective if you trust it. If you trust it. If you don't trust it, it doesn't work at all. It's why big coyote running out off the side of the mountain and looking down. So that's part of it. Any comments about that? About taking the
Yeah. I think it's a great practice right now to take the mixed question MBEs as practice, because that is a great way for you to know what your challenge topics are. and for you to know the ones that you have a lot of facile in that you can just work through easily. And that doesn't mean you don't have to still study those, but I think that's the best way to know where are your hiccups, where are your roadblocks, where are your mental roadblocks when you see some kind of question. Is it on common law? Is it on civil procedure? And then go back to your mind maps with those questions after you've taken the whole set. Go back to your mind maps
Yeah.
and make sure your mind maps are working for you and you're not working for your mind maps. I worked with a student last week who had a digital mind map out of MindMeister and was working very diligently. It was on one of the amendments to the Constitution. But this student had not seen the pattern that is in this particular amendment. And we recrafted the mind map for this student, and it jumped out at them the answers to everything involving that amendment. And the student said, "Wow, when I get to the amendments, I just get really freaked out because there's so many of them and it's hard to keep them straight." Not if your mind maps are done correctly. If your mind maps are done in a relational way, then they will jump back out at you. So it's a great way to show you where you need to concentrate some effort to take the MBE practice questions and
Yeah.
then to
Good
look
point.
at your mind map afterwards.
Yeah, it's great. Great comment. You mentioned
Mm.
constitutional law. And there was something else I wanted to talk about today. As many of the Supreme Court just finished their term this week, and they've issued the last of their decisions. And there's some wildly controversial decisions in a lot of areas, no doubt about it. I think presidential immunity is probably the most overarching of those decisions in terms of its application. But here's the point you need to hear. None of that will be tested on the bar exam, at least not on the UBE or on the multi-state bar exam. Now, I have to put one caveat in here. In years past, the Florida bar examiners have, last year at this time, they issued a email to applicants saying, everything that the Supreme Court just decided is all fair game on the exam. That was disingenuous of them because the test was written months and months ago. And in fact, in the July 2023 exam, none of it was tested. And it put people into a panic. And we did some remedial videos for people to get them ready for it. But it was a distraction from the real test, which had nothing to do with any of it. I don't know why Florida decided to issue that warning. It seemed odd. They didn't even test those decisions in February of 2024. I suppose by now they're probably something that could be tested on. But every other jurisdiction, the bar examiners stay away from these decisions, in part because they're controversial, in part because they're still untested and unformed. So if you're worried about whether or not there will be questions on abortion rights, seems very unlikely. Questions that came from last year's decisions. Now, we have an update on Supreme Court decisions from last term, the term before, and you can watch that. Relatively pointless. And certainly the decisions that came down this term, I don't see any way that those are on any exam in any jurisdiction, regardless of what the examiners tell you. So again, this is one of those questions we get at the end, not for the purpose of bars. The purpose of society, yeah.
Just think logically, these exams are already set. You're going to be taking this exam in less than 30 days. They're not going to open up the exam and redo their con law questions to include these. So just ignore them.
Yeah. And I would say generally try to put your blinders on for the next 30 days. Lots of politics, lots of things going on, and they're all important. Right now, your job is to take and pass the bar exam. It will all still be here, I promise you, on August 1st. Just keep your head down, keep working, and try and stay out of those muddy waters if you can. All right, back to biggest challenges. Another biggest challenge that we got, somebody said, I'm trying to not overstudy. And I thought that was a good biggest challenge, right? That it is tempting to want to do everything as we talked about, to do, if one is good, two is better, three is even better. But it doesn't really work that way. And in the daily email countdown series that I send out, you will begin to notice a pattern as we get through the month of me telling you to do less, not to do more. But it is not the time to start over studying, over panicking, overworking, because as Tracy pointed out, you've got to be ready for the exam in 30 days, not exhausted. So this idea of taking a nap is a great one. The other part of it that I would say is this is the time to start setting your sleep and eating routines for the exam. If you know you're going to get up at 6 a.m. on test day, you should start getting up at 6 a.m. now. And if that means you have to go to bed at 10 p.m., start going to bed at 10 p.m. now, even if you're a night owl and you like to study all night, because you really need to set those habits. The amount of alcohol you're going to consume. I often say this is not the time to start smoking or quit smoking. It's just, you just want to get into this routine of making every study session feel like the bar exam. Get up early, have a good breakfast, study for 3 hours, take a lunch break, study for 3 hours, take a good dinner break, then study for a couple of hours. And that mimics the bar exam. All right, biggest challenge, maintaining my stamina and momentum. I think this kind of goes to that idea of not overstudying, don't you, Tracy? You can lose stamina and momentum because you're just trying to do everything.
I really like the suggestion you just gave about getting in the bar taking habit right now. And I agree, you shouldn't try to quit smoking during this time if you're a smoker, but you should certainly get to the point where you can go 3 hours at a time without a cigarette because you're not going to be able to smoke in there. And if you smoke other things or you drink other things, this is not the time to be self-soothing with those types of things. You need to be on your best game. If you think about college or maybe even law school, if you ever pulled an all-nighter, people wear it as a badge of honor. They walk in, oh, I pulled an all-nighter. I might just take this exam. Generally, they don't do well on the exam and they don't remember anything that they just did. So you have a 2-day exam, not one. And you do need to remember what's going on. You need to know what you did that day because it may build on for the next day. And I think it's really important to monitor yourself and monitor your energy level and know when your high energy times are and when your low energy times are. And don't fight those. Just work with them.
Yeah, yeah, good. I think stamina, momentum, stamina comes from continuing to get exercise every day, from eating right, from sleeping. Those are the basics and nothing changes there. I do think anxiety saps your stamina. So, getting outside, walking, swimming, biking, those are things that really help. Certainly help me. In terms of momentum, you will build momentum as the month goes on naturally. It just happens. I liken the bar exam to the Death Star in Star Wars. It just gets closer and closer. And finally, you're in the gravitational pull of it. And there's nothing you can do. And then the adrenaline kicks in and you've got momentum. So I think in some ways it may be harder to get your momentum right around the 4th of July than at any other time in the study process because there's so many distractions for us as bar takers. Now you have politics this year on top of it. There's a whole lot going on out there. And it's easy to lose your momentum, but don't get caught up in it. Don't get swept up in it. So that would be my thought on that. Another biggest challenge, somebody said, is maintaining self-confidence. This is an interesting one to me. I like the idea of being self-confident, certainly in the exam. I want you going in being self-confident, but I'm not terribly worried about self-confidence today. In fact, I'd like your studies to kick your butt a little bit. I'd like you to be uncomfortable. Now, that doesn't mean despondent. It doesn't mean, oh my God, I'm going to fail. What it means is that you're self-confident that you're learning, not self-confident that you know it all, because you don't. And sometimes I get nervous when somebody comes to me at this point and they say, oh, I got it all figured out. I've done this a long time, and most people don't have it all figured out and all worked out. And the last 30 days, a lot changes, even though it doesn't feel like a long time. I don't want it to be false self-confidence. What I really want is confidence in your ability to study and get ready in 30 days, not, oh, I got it all figured out. Does that make sense?
Yes, again, I'm going to bring you back into the courtroom because you never go into a trial or a hearing knowing everything that's going to happen. There's always going to be surprises. There's always going to be something that is mentioned that you hadn't thought about. What makes the difference in whether you're going to be successful in that setting is how prepared you are going in. And so it's not a matter of knowing everything. It's not a matter of being so overprepared that nobody can possibly bring up anything that you are not already fully briefed and you're ready to go with all your exhibits and all that. That self-confidence is, I can take anything that is thrown at me here. A selective intuition in using the tools that we have taught you, you are prepared for anything that is thrown your way. That's the self-confidence. I can handle anything that is thrown my way. Not, I know everything there is to know about this subject or all subjects or anything else.
Agreed. All right. Another key group of biggest challenges I got had to do with anxiety. How do I keep my anxiety under control, right? That's the essence of the challenge. I think that there are a couple things you can do. One is what we already discussed: get outside, get some exercise, change the environment for a while during a break time. That will help a lot with anxiety. Number one. Number two is to recognize the world around you. That is, there are family members that you can focus on. Maybe you've got kids or a spouse or a partner. Spend some time with them. Focus on them. Realize that in that time that you're with them, your anxiety dissipates. The third thing is do something nice for someone else. I'm going to devote an entire day's email to that concept, because what we've seen is that when people do something nice for other people, it just gives you a perspective that you didn't have before. I had a student that did grocery shopping for an elderly relative, and they realized how fortunate they were to be able to be ambulatory and get out and do those things, and it brought their anxiety way down. The other thing is that in our course, we have a series of self-care videos. They're at the very end of the course. You'll see them. They're 5 to 10-minute videos, and they are all designed to deal with anxiety and managing it and working through it. There's also something called the Test Anxiety Workshop in the course, and it's classic. I first started doing it 20 plus years ago, and it's one of the most popular lectures that I give. So all of those things are worth checking out and visiting. And then finally, we have something called Abundance for the Bar Exam. It's a 90-minute masterclass. It gives you a wealth of practical tools about how to manage anxiety and to get the most out of your studies. So those are some tips I've got for keeping anxiety under control. Anything that you have, Tracy, that I didn't talk about?
Yes. First of all, start each day before you ever get out of bed with an exercise of gratitude. Just start that day with gratitude and optimism and how fortunate you are to be in the position you're in. That kind of sets the whole tone for the day. The second thing that Jackson didn't mention that I will is use your community here. You have other students that you have met in group coaching sessions, in Level Up, in boot camp, in Booster. Find somebody in the community and talk through your anxieties with that person. Chances are they're having the same type of anxiety. And just knowing that you're not alone is such a big thing. You can, in your coaching calls, if you have purchased those, talk to us about that and we'll talk to you about it as well. Third thing is recognize what your super ego voice is. And that's the voice that tells you can't do this, that you're not competent, that you're fat, stupid, ugly, lazy, whatever else it is. I told you you couldn't do this. Why are you wasting all this time and money, all that? And tell your super ego to go sit in the corner. And you have to do that every morning along with your gratitude work. Those are the things that I would suggest that you do. And the things that I would suggest you not do are things that are hooking behaviors for you that can work themselves or maybe have already worked themselves into addictions for you. And that's not just drinking or using drugs, recreational drugs, or other types of medications, but it's also excessive shopping, pornography, gambling, talking incessantly, taking copious notes so that you're just full of, it reminds me of pig pen from peanuts with stuff all over the place. So manage your behaviors. And if you need to get help on those, it's not too late to do that.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's
that's
what I
really
was
true. Those are great ideas. And I just have to say, it's much harder to do what Tracy's doing, which is to listen to me talk and then have to come up with other things. The next biggest challenge is avoiding the panic of going blank on the exam day, right? You're in the test and suddenly there's nothing in your conscious brain. Got any thoughts about that?
It happened.
Blank.
It,
Nope,
it,
you didn't go.
no, it will happen when you open the test exam. And the very first question, you're going to look at it and say, I don't have any idea. I don't think I ever studied that. So just close your eyes, maybe move to the next question and then come back to it. All you need to do is just do your mantra, settle down, breathe deep, be grateful that you're there. Remember that you're showing your professional confidence. Breathe deep again. Take the super ego and put it off to the side. I don't need you right now. Take another breath. Let all the work that you put in come to you. Open your eyes again and then start taking the exam. It will come to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, everything is in your non-conscious brain. It's all there. The challenge is to get it from back here to up here. And so all the things that Tracy just described are things that help do, right? You take a breath, you do 3, 2, 1, you refocus, you take a moment to just breathe it in and breathe it out. And remember the writing system. I created the writing system because people didn't know the law. If you'll use the facts and just reason from the facts, the arguments to the law will be there when you're ready. When you show up, it will arrive at the same time. When it comes to MBE, if you use selective intuition, you're completely shut off from here in the first place. So this part of your brain will pass the multi-state. This part of your brain probably will not. So just keep that in mind as you're working, and going blank is a natural part of the process.
I tell you how many times I showed up for a trial or even showed up on the bench during a big trial and got out and for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, couldn't remember what I was supposed to do. It happens. It's okay. It's just your reset. If you think about a battery going dead and then you have to reset it. Once you reset it, then you're kick-ass. But expect it. It happens. And don't be afraid of it. It's part of the process.
I can't tell you how many times I've taught photo reading and suddenly I'm like, remember the next step? There you go. All right. Speaking of reading, a student who said, I'm taking your course for the second time and I feel like I'm behind on my substantive material. So should I complete all of the lectures and mind map them and then use the time from July 10th to focus only on practice tests? Should I do everything? You cannot do everything. Work on what you don't know. It isn't necessary, particularly if you're retaking the course you through it all once before. You don't have to do it all over again. Go to the things you don't know, and then you'll be fine. This student, they said, this was interesting. On the last bar exam, I used selective intuition on the MBE for the first 100 questions, but then on the second half, I didn't get through 100 questions. I stopped using selective intuition. It's because I didn't practice enough. No, had nothing to do with your practice level. Had to do with your lack of faith. That's really what it comes down to. When you do these techniques, you will write your essays faster. You'll do the MBEs faster. You'll get through the performance tests faster. But as soon as you start thinking to yourself, oh, I wonder if this works, or maybe it isn't going to work, or maybe I didn't go through all of the lectures a second, third, fourth time, then what happens is you are literally Wile E. Coyote running off the side of the mountain and looking down. There is no doubt about it. I see this all the time. And this student had that experience. First half of the MBE, they were great. They were running, everything was going fine. And then inexplicably, they got into their head and everything went and the stress got the better of them. This is why you've got to do the personal care, the stress relaxation techniques, so that you don't let stress getting into you. It is not about how much practice you do over the next 30 days. Do the practice, and it's working on the things you don't know. It's certainly going to help you. But I have never seen a correlation between somebody doing more questions and getting a higher score. I know that's a myth that's out there. If I do all 5,000 questions of XYZ's bar review course, I'm going to pass. It doesn't work that way. If it did, that's all we tell people to do is do all those questions. So don't create these false expectations and don't set yourself up for failure by asking yourself to do something that you probably can't do. Nobody's going to get through all the essays or all the MBEs or all the performance tests. Your thoughts, Tracy?
You're never going to know everything about the law. You're never going to know anything about the law in even one area. The goal is to be able to access what you do know and use the relationships that you have learned and that you have put on your mind map and that you can imagine. And then your selective intuition will help you on the multiple choice questions with what you have accessed and what you have put relationally in your mind map, and you'll be able to get the right answer. When you're writing an essay, same thing. You're not going to know all the law. then the goal is to access what you do know, to follow, as Jackson said, let the facts lead you into your theory of the case and the opposing party's theory of the case, and the law will logically follow the theory of the case. And then you synthesize that down to your application paragraph. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about here in about 1 minute.
Go ahead. So, yeah. So we will continue to do biggest challenge questions for every podcast leading up to the exam now. So if you've got a biggest challenge, we didn't talk about it, email us at jackson@celebrationbarreview.com, and we'll take a look at it and respond to it in upcoming webinars. Tracy, let's talk about OJ. Go ahead.
One of the biggest challenges that I am seeing across the board with students right now in their writing is their tendency to push everything together and to put law in the fact paragraph, to bring in facts that weren't in the fact paragraph in the application paragraph, to forget to put the law argument behind someone's theory of the case. And so it becomes a mishmash when you're reading it. And for the bar examiner, it becomes very difficult to understand whether this student has the concepts down that are being tested, has the law, and can follow it to a logical conclusion. If the bar examiner cannot follow what you're doing, you're not going to get a passing score on your essay. So I was talking with a student the other day about this, and it popped into my and had an image of an orange. Let's say that the case was that Johnson had accused me of stealing oranges out of his orchard, and he was suing me for the conversion of that product and for trespass. The facts are that we're talking about an orange or oranges. We're talking about stealing them off the orange tree and converting them to my own purpose. So your facts are going to talk about that. Your facts are going to say, all right, first of all, what's the legal relationship between the parties? And from what I just told you, I don't really have any legal relationship with the farmer. I don't have any permission to be on his orange orchard. So I am a trespasser. He is a property owner. And you identify that as your first fact. And then you're going to say what happened. Judge Tracy went over and was thirsty, as Jackson pointed out, and stole a few oranges off the trees and then climbed back over the fence and took off with the oranges. And then why are you in court? Farmer Johnson sued Judge Tracy for the oranges. Now, it's going to be important in your facts to write about the orange. And it's going to be important as you look at this picture, see also that there is something that's been snapped off a tree, because that shows that it probably belonged to the tree and that wasn't just on the ground somewhere. The leaf doesn't matter, right? The leaf is nothing that's going to matter to this fact pattern. So there's no reason to mention it. And I see that in so many cases that people are writing these sentences about things that really don't matter to the crux of the case. So you have the facts. The next thing you want to do is peel the orange. Your law paragraph is the segments of the orange. There are 4 of them to this particular orange, not 8, not 2, as I commonly see. So-and-so is going to argue that. So Farmer Johnson's going to argue that he didn't give permission to Judge Tracy to enter his orange orchard and take produce off the tree. That is a theory of the case. That is the first sentence that you use. It is the first orange segment. You have to have an orange segment that follows it, something about the law. The law says that it's not okay to just go on someone's property and steal their fruit and then go back out and take it and use it for your own purposes. The law is going to follow logically behind the theory of the case, and it will relate logically to the facts. Then you have to put as your third segment Judge Tracy's theory of the case. The theory of the case always starts with the words, Judge Tracy will argue that. You always want to start with who it is, the party, and what they're going to argue. And she's going to argue that she thought it was an open field, that there wasn't anything that said, do not trespass. And I needed the orange. So I went and took it. The law says that whatever, open lands are free game, whatever it is. Even if you have to make a stretch to get the law, you've got to put something in there. 4 segments, not just the orange, 4 segments. Theory of the case, law. Opposing theory of the case, law. That's all your law paragraph is. And then finally, you're going to squeeze from the facts and from the law those segments, and you're going to make orange juice. And the orange juice is your end product. Your end product is your application. But you'll notice that it is still orange in there. It's still an orange juice. It's not a Diet Coke. It's not a burger. It is orange juice from the orange, from the segments. Squeeze it together. What do you get? What is the end product? That's your orange juice. I think if you keep this imagery in your mind as you're writing, it will help you with your FLA to make sure that you have a very clear statement of facts. Very clearly, what is the orange we're talking about? What's the legal relationship between the parties? Who is suing who for what? Those all belong in your fact paragraph. Then peel the orange and get your segments. And your segments are 4, not 3, not 6, 4. Plaintiff's theory of the case is. The law that supports it is. Defendant's counter theory of their case is. The law that supports it is. And then squeeze it all together, make your orange juice, make it something that the bar examiner can see, taste, feel, and see that it flows all the way up from your orange to your segments to that delicious, beautiful glass of orange juice that will sustain you and fulfill you and get you a passing grade on that essay.
How many segments?
Actually,
Fabulous analogy. Love it. I love it. Thank you very much, Tracy. That's wonderful. Listen, everybody, have a great 4th of July. Have a great holiday. Have a great, productive study week ahead of you. We will be back next Wednesday talking about more biggest challenges, more of the things that are going on. And make sure you check out all of the various tools that we've got to help you at the end here, the multi-state video nutshell, the bar maps, such as so many things that we can do to help. And we've got plenty of time. If you're in our course, keep checking for those daily emails. And we will see you next week. So with that, bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.